The date is September 18th, 2025. As the clock strikes midnight across Europe, a new day dawns, but the air is thick with unease. The continent stirs restlessly, shadows of history looming over the present. Tension grips Europe, from the bustling cafes of Warsaw, where anxious faces peer over steaming cups of coffee, to the imposing government offices in Berlin, where security is tighter than ever. Even in Paris, commuters scan the morning headlines, searching for reassurance that never comes. The continent is on edge, haunted by echoes of the Cold War and the ghosts of Yalta. The decisions made decades ago at the Yalta conference still cast a long shadow, shaping borders, alliances, and the very sense of security in Europe. The optimism of 1991, when the Berlin Wall fell and hopes soared for a united Europe, has vanished. In its place stand two armed camps, NATO and Russia, staring each other down across new lines of division, suspicion etched into every movement. This crisis is the result of decades of broken promises and clashing histories. Treaties once celebrated have been eroded by mistrust, and the streets have seen protests as citizens question the wisdom of their leaders' choices. NATO's eastward expansion, viewed as a shield by the West, is seen in Moscow as a sword pointed at its heart. Each diplomatic move is scrutinized, every military exercise interpreted as a provocation. Each new NATO member, Poland, the Czech Republic, Hungary, the Baltics, deepened Russian fears of encirclement. For Moscow, these additions are not just lines on a map, but reminders of a shrinking buffer zone and a history of invasions from the West. Now, Russian military exercises near Latvia and Estonia are more aggressive than ever. Tanks rumble through forests, helicopters slice through the morning mist, and the world watches satellite images for signs of escalation. NATO has responded with rapid deployments, moving troops and equipment to the Baltic front lines. Fighter jets roar into the sky, convoys snake through narrow roads, and local populations brace for the unknown. The rhetoric on both sides has hardened, leaving little room for compromise. Diplomatic channels have gone quiet, replaced by ultimatums and silence. Once busy embassies now stand shuttered, and negotiation tables gather dust as hope for dialogue fades. The risk of miscalculation is real. A single spark could ignite a devastating conflict. Soldiers on both sides study their maps, aware that one wrong move could change the course of history. Families at home watch the news, hoping for peace but fearing the worst. Europe holds its breath, caught between a past it can't escape and a future it fears. The ghosts of Yalta linger, whispering warnings as the Baltic coast braces for whatever comes next. In this uneasy twilight, the fate of a continent hangs in the balance. At the heart of this crisis is a chasm of perception. NATO sees itself as a defensive alliance, protecting its members' sovereignty. Its expansion was a response to the wishes of free nations, not aggression. But Moscow sees NATO's growth as an existential threat, a tightening noose. Missile defenses in Poland and Romania are viewed as attempts to neutralize Russia's deterrent. Every NATO move is seen as provocation, fueling a classic security dilemma. Each side's defensive actions trigger the other's fears, creating a cycle of escalation. The West champions sovereign choice. Russia insists on a security buffer. With no shared language of security, Europe edges closer to confrontation. Not long ago, France stood at the forefront of Europe's diplomatic outreach to Russia, with President Emmanuel Macron personally engaging Vladimir Putin in marathon talks and high-profile summits. France's approach was rooted in the belief that dialogue, negotiation, and a measure of strategic autonomy could keep the peace and prevent escalation on the continent. Paris sought to carve out a unique role for itself, one that balanced European unity with an independent voice, always seeking to keep channels open even when tensions ran high. But that era has come to a decisive end. The relentless and brutal nature of Russian aggression in Ukraine has shattered any lingering French faith in the power of diplomacy alone. The shockwaves from the invasion have forced a fundamental reassessment in Paris. Now France has adopted a new language, the language of deterrence and military strength. French leaders argue that only a credible show of force will earn respect in Moscow, and that Europe's security depends on a willingness to act, not just to talk. In a dramatic shift, France has deployed a full combat brigade to Romania, placing thousands of troops and heavy equipment on NATO's eastern flank, closer to the front lines than ever before. French air and naval patrols have also surged, with Rafale jets and warships now a regular presence in the skies and seas near Russia, sending a clear message of readiness and resolve. These actions are not just symbolic. They are a clear signal to both allies and adversaries. France is prepared to defend its partners with real force, not just words. This new posture has emboldened Eastern European nations who now see France as a more reliable and assertive partner in the face of Russian threats. At the same time, it has forced Germany and other European powers to reconsider their own defense policies, sparking debates about military spending and alliance commitments. The era of ambiguity is over. France now insists on clarity, unity, and unwavering resolve in the face of aggression, making its position unmistakably clear to both friends and foes. The new French doctrine is simple. There can be no return to business as usual with Russia. Security and defense now come before economic or political considerations. As a result, NATO is more unified than it has been in decades, but the stakes are higher, the risks greater, and the room for diplomatic maneuver has narrowed. France's hardening stance has reshaped the alliance, making it stronger, but also raising the risks of confrontation, a new era where words are no longer enough and actions speak louder than ever. After the Soviet collapse, NATO searched for purpose, shifting to peacekeeping and crisis management. Russia's actions in Georgia, Crimea, and beyond forced a return to basics, collective defense. NATO has rearmed, transforming into Fortress Europe. Multinational battle groups in Poland and the Baltics are now full brigades. Command structures and logistics are being upgraded for rapid deployment. Defense budgets are rising as nations rush to meet spending pledges. The mindset has shifted to high-intensity warfare against a peer adversary. NATO's unity is stronger, but the continent is locked into a deterrence paradigm. The future is defined by military readiness, not peacekeeping. Beyond tanks and troops, a shadow war rages in Europe's grey zones. Russia's hybrid warfare blends military posturing, cyber attacks, economic pressure, and disinformation. The aim: destabilize from within, erode trust, and achieve goals without open conflict. Tactics include funding extremist parties, weaponizing energy, and orchestrating sabotage. Cyber attacks target governments and infrastructure, blurring the line between war and peace. These actions are hard to attribute, paralyzing NATO's decision-making. The result is pervasive mistrust and strategic paralysis. The shadow war weakens Europe from the inside out. The information war is a central front in this conflict. A digital iron curtain descends, with Russia's disinformation muddying the truth. State media, proxy sites, and troll farms flood social media with confusion and division. Disinformation exploits social and political rifts, fostering cynicism and apathy. The goal isn't persuasion, but to erode trust and paralyze democratic action. NATO and the EU struggle to counter the flood without violating free speech. The digital war undermines consensus and weakens resolve. The battle for Europe's hearts and minds is far from over. Eastern Europe is now a militarized chessboard, every move a signal. NATO's forward presence in the Baltics and Poland is now permanent and heavily armed. Air defenses and stockpiles are in place, ready for rapid response. Russia mirrors this buildup, modernizing forces and fortifying Kaliningrad. Both sides conduct constant, complex exercises, raising the risk of accidental clashes. A single incident, a jet buzzing a warship aboard a skirmish, could spark disaster. The stakes are existential. Readiness is everything. Generals on both sides know speed and intelligence could decide Europe's fate. The margin for error is terrifyingly small. As military buildups grow, diplomacy fades to a whisper. Communication channels have broken down, arms control treaties are gone. The diplomatic vacuum heightens the risk of miscalculation. Even genuine de-escalation attempts are met with suspicion. Yet, diplomacy remains essential to avert catastrophe. Small steps, hotlines, rules of engagement, transparency could rebuild trust. A stable security order requires addressing both sides' grievances. This means dialogue, not appeasement, and clear articulation of intentions. The path is narrow and fraught, but abandoning diplomacy courts disaster. Only negotiation can prevent a war with no winners. On this tense September evening, Europe stands on the brink of disaster. The air is thick with uncertainty as the continent holds its breath, teetering on the edge of a precipice. The lights of the cities below twinkle like stars, oblivious to the looming threat that hangs over them. Massive military buildups, broken trust, and disinformation have created the gravest crisis since the Cold War. The rumble of military convoys echoes through the streets, a stark reminder of the fragile peace that could shatter at any moment. Soldiers, clad in camouflage, prepare for the worst, while the media buzzes with headlines that fuel the fire of fear and uncertainty. A single mistake could unleash a war worse than any in living memory. The tension is palpable at border checkpoints, where armed forces stand vigilant, eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of danger. In emergency meetings, officers wear expressions of grave concern, aware that the stakes have never been higher. This is a crisis of choices, not destiny. Decades of decisions have led here. The history of Europe is a tapestry woven with moments of triumph and tragedy, each decision a thread that has brought us to this critical juncture. Political summits once filled with hope now serve as reminders of opportunities missed and paths not taken. Both Russia and the West bear responsibility for missed opportunities and mistrust. The handshake between leaders is a fragile symbol of diplomacy, overshadowed by the weight of history and the burden of mistrust. The divide between the Kremlin and NATO is more than just a geographical one. It is a chasm of ideology and ambition. NATO must show strength and unity to deter aggression. The sight of NATO troops standing shoulder to shoulder is a powerful image of solidarity, a message to the world that aggression will not be tolerated. The flag waves proudly, a beacon of hope in a world fraught with uncertainty. But deterrence alone isn't enough. Diplomacy must remain in play. The art of negotiation is a delicate dance where every word and gesture carries weight. Diplomats and leaders gather around tables, seeking common ground and striving for solutions that will pave the way to peace. Addressing security concerns on both sides is the only path to peace. In the halls of power, discussions are intense and urgent, as officials from both sides work tirelessly to address the security concerns that threaten to unravel the fabric of peace. Press conferences offer glimpses of progress, but the road ahead is long and fraught with challenges. Managing this adversarial relationship is essential to avoid catastrophe. In the shadows, military analysts and generals strategize, their eyes fixed on radar screens and maps, aware that every decision could tip the balance between peace and war. The task is daunting, but the stakes are too high to falter. The challenge is to keep hope for a peaceful future alive. As the sun rises over the city skyline, it brings with it a new day and the promise of a brighter future. In parks, children play, blissfully unaware of the tensions that grip the world around them. Their laughter is a reminder of what is at stake and why the pursuit of peace is paramount. To fail is to condemn Europe to fear, division, and the shadow of war. The barbed wire that lines the borders is a stark symbol of division, a reminder of the consequences of failure. Civilians seek shelter and families are torn apart, living under the constant threat of conflict. The shadow of war looms large, but the hope for peace remains a guiding light.